Is there anything throughout this interview that you want to talk about that I haven't thought to ask, or anything that you want to go back to and take your time to think about that?
Well, I'll be honest with you. You've asked some really heavy questions, and meaning that I've had to do a lot of thinking and reflection. So I'm kind of in the zone on the thinking and the reflection. But about me, yeah, there is one thing about me that I would like to say, just generally, because I've talked about the family a lot, and I've talked about our responsibility a lot. But as a emerging threats expert, an analyst and writer on the issue of emerging threats, I see a lot of parallels between the issue of slavery and the harm that is done to my family, to our nation, and the present issue of climate emergency and the reliance on fossil fuel burning. I know that, of course, fossil fuels are not a people, but the impact of fossil fuel burning on the global community and the relationship to power associated with fossil fuel burning is very similar to the relationship of power to the institution of slavery. And the same and similar mythologies that have been spun up to justify slavery are now being spun up to justify fossil fuel burning and the harm that it inflicts. Mythologies such as it's inevitable, it's the only way to do things, it's too hard to change, the economy relies on it. We can't change. We're in denial of the consequences. There are so many great things that came of it. I mean, these are myths, and it's the myths of the Old South, I believe, that have harmed us. And we have, through a lack of imagination, not found a better way. But when it comes to fossil fuel burning, as it was in the case of the survival of our nation, and I don't believe the nation could have existed and maintained slavery. It would have torn us apart, and it did. It nearly destroyed our nation. And with fossil fuel burning, we cannot exist as a civilization globally. We cannot. So there will be a reckoning, and it's coming soon. As a threat analyst. So I say that the things that, like for me, like that I'm dealing with for my family and to try and seek that justice, there's a similar fight, for justice and for life going on right now. And so I guess the thing that I would say as an emerging threats expert is, in looking at the history of these things, do not close yourself off with the issues of today that are coming closer, like the hyena in the snows of Kilimanjaro in that Hemingway short story. And unfortunately, it's moving. So please, I ask, just stay alert out there and, do your best and don't get drawn into the doubt and the denial and the cynicism and the myths. So I guess that's the one thing that I would say about myself and the other things that I do.
I had hoped that you would speak to climate change. And I recognize a parallel and a continuing theme in this interview, and that's like imagining a world of possibilities, right? And looking back at the moment in the interview where you said that there was a time in the 1860s, maybe before, where we could have prevented the death of 600,000 Americans, and that's just on the battlefields, right? Like, that's not talking about all the other aftermath and the trauma, the intergenerational trauma that follows through the 20th century. So I really appreciate that insight. That was a really compelling takeaway for me to learn from talking to you. And I want to allude back to your quoting of Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail. And he says that, the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice. And he didn't mean that there's something intrinsic about humanity in which it bends toward justice as inevitable, but it's through the actions of people, like the people who are willing to fight for justice. And so I want to thank you for your willingness to speak out, to act on what you find as moral causes. And I really appreciate that.